You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to yet again another episode of the Red Moon Podcast, live every single Tuesday night, right here on all your favorite social media networks. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian,
and our normal new host, Don Sebastian. Don! We got whoa! Don transitioned. He morphed.
Whoa!
Hey, Don and Sean.
It was Sean's twin brother. You don't see him very often.
Yeah. You know, he's gone in a blink of an eye.
Sean killed him.
Yeah, I ate him.
You know, he was an evil man. And he killed
Sean
him.
ate him.
An evil Sean.
Sean said I ate him because I didn't want no competition.
That's right.
I'm telling you right now, if they do not have the dinner scene from Twister,
Why? Just that
Twisters.
exact scene. They
Just that
cut
scene,
yeah.
randomly in
that's
the movie.
all,
Just cut to
all
that
I
scene.
want. I want that scene, and I want one specific line, and that is the finger of God. I want that in the movie.
Now I
If
feel
they
like that
don't have
line,
that,
yeah, that
I
line
have-
I feel like has to
yeah,
be in there.
I have a feeling
I don't
they
know
would
about
do
the
that.
dinner scene.
They have
but-
to. And honestly, I want Glenn Powell to deliver it. I know that's not the same. He kind of plays the
Well,
Bill Paxton character.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He
But
does,
I
yeah.
want him to deliver, just like,
I think he could though. That's why I want him to do it.
actually, there's another one. And this one comes from, there's so many good ones. I mean, it's like Silver Bullet. I think it's kind of on
I'm waiting
par.
for somebody to remake Silver Bullet.
No, that's untouchable.
Yeah.
Gary Busey would have to be in it.
It would be hard to do without Gary Busey.
And
but
I would want
think,
him to be the cripple. I want him to be Corey Haim.
I think somebody can make a true not that the other one wasn't scary enough. It is
I can
creepy,
just
but I
see-
think
No,
somebody can make a
I can
truly
see the
terrifying.
interviews where
He's
they
retarded. He could literally be mentally retarded
Yeah.
in the movie.
They would ask him. They would be like, "Now, Gary, have you ever talked about remaking Silver Bullet?" He'd be like, "Let me talk about buttered sausage. Let's talk about buttered sausage."
I found a werewolf. I howled at the moon. I know what it's silver like the moon.
Buttered sausage.
No, but
That video, Brandon
my favorite.
stumbled upon the full deep fake, and it was
yes,
just yeah.
I thought
He
it was
didn't-
legit real.
Yeah, he didn't know that was. Do you know that that's deep fake?
I did not know that. I thought
Yeah,
that was
no.
actual
See?
Gary Busey.
It is-
And the guy who's doing his voice literally kept it for like 40 minutes is the whole interview.
crazy.
Oh wow!
And the guy
That's
who
good.
made the deep fake, I
Yeah.
mean, it says it clear in the title.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I was baffled.
I
was
The
baffled.
only
That was
reason I knew
legit.
it was deep fake is because the first video I saw of it was the actual video. So
Okay,
which
yeah.
blows my
All
mind.
I've seen is
Where the
that one
memes,
clip
yeah.
where he's
If
like, "Let's talk
people-
about this." Let's talk about buttered
Buttered
sausage.
Yeah, it
Let's
is.
talk
It's
about
crazy.
buttered sausage.
Like, when you look at that and be like, that's what they can do with
That's
with
insane.
AI now.
He's like, oh,
Yeah.
is that your jam? No, I don't like jam. I like honey.
kiss it on the lips.
Kiss it on the lips.
The reason it's so believable is not just because it looks real, because it sounds
Exactly. Yeah. It
it's-
sounds like something he would say.
Yes,
It's not just his voice.
It's not just his voice. It's like the way his mannerisms, the way
Yeah.
he talks, what he's
100%.
talking about. When he talks about like sprinkling salt on a goat's ass in his YouTube video, kissing honey on the lips just seems normal.
It's
so
hard.
believable.
It's in very bad quality, but if you can look up the old Comedy Central episodes, I'm with Busey. They're fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're great.
Yeah.
I've seen some of that.
yeah.
And it's even before he went even further.
That's
off
what I'm
the deep
saying.
end.
Like
Yeah.
buttered sausage, I just thought was normal.
Yeah.
It's just every day for Busey.
Yeah. But no,
it's
the other
terrifying.
Twister line that they need to have is from he's from The Princess Bride. Is it Carrie Elwes?
Okay,
Oh, yeah,
LS,
the guy
yeah,
from
yeah,
Saw,
yeah.
yeah.
When he's in it and he goes, and they're like, "You took her, you damn thief," and he goes, "Unrealized idea,
Unrealized idea.
unrealized." I'm like, I just the way he
Yeah.
delivers it.
Yeah.
He's like, the days of what is it? Oh man, I'm missing it. I'm missing up the line. It's like the days of sniffing us in the dirt are over or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But just a great movie. Twister is an
Always always
iconic.
tunes the scene. He's good when he's in something campy because he plays that well. But when you give him something serious, he still chews the scenery. And I'm just,
Which is funny because
Can't take him
he
seriously.
plays the Princess Bride straight.
Yeah.
And that's what
I
makes
know,
it great.
I know.
Yeah. It's so good.
It's like the only thing he's not campy in.
He is. I'd say, hey, he's a great actor.
Yep.
He's
Robin Hood Men in Tights was
yes.
Yep.
that was great.
He's a great character.
He was in one back in the day with Alicia Silverstone, where she was like, he moves into her family's guest house, and she
I don't know what that one is.
seduces him and comes on to him. It's called The Crush.
Oh,
Okay.
And she like tries to ruins
check
his
that out.
life over like him. She has a crush on him and he don't like her.
Oh,
So she like tries to seduce him and all kinds of stuff.
Gotcha.
It's
So
good.
then he becomes jaded, becomes a doctor, marries his wife, and cheats on her
Yeah.
because of what she did, and then he gets
Then
locked in
gets
a
his
bathroom.
Foot chained up
Yeah,
in the bathroom.
that's
yeah.
exactly what
Gotcha,
happens. That's what
gotcha.
happens.
See,
Saul was actually a sequel
woman cheats
to The
on you,
Crush.
and you end up in a bathroom having to cut your foot off.
I mean, honestly, this probably needs to be a
Women.
series that Red Moon does. Is we take an actor, just like they did with like
Combine
6
all their movies.
Yes,
Yeah.
and find just like people have done with Disney movies.
Yeah.
Or how many different
that's
actors
like,
connect to like 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Well, how they made like Titanic 2, and they used clips of Leonardo DiCaprio's other movies.
Exactly
Yeah.
that. Right.
It's like this is really just a sequel to Titanic.
They're like, oh wait,
They pull up the Revenant scenes and stuff, like him
so
getting attacked by a bear, and then you see
they're like, wait,
she's like,
wait,
Jack, where's Jack?
we're bringing him to the surface, and he's like frozen in ice. It's like, what the hell? It's so good.
It's like Captain America, man. He just
yeah.
got frozen in ice.
No,
That's all.
they unthaw Sylvester Stallone from Demolition Man or
There
whatever.
you go. Oh man, I'd
And
be
it's
all right
supposed
with
to be
that.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Dude, he'd be a good actor to do. String all his movies
Oh,
together.
you could.
They'd all be the same movie.
That's why you could
Yeah.
because
It's
they,
like they'd all connect.
like other than Rocky, like they're
Yeah.
all just
It's like, can you tell which action scene we pulled this from? It's like, which
I
one
think
is it?
his first movie is on Netflix right now. The one that
Oh,
he
yeah?
did with the Fonz.
Okay.
I want to see that.
I can't remember what it's called.
I also
watch
want to
that.
see the one you recommended, Sean. It was the cop one.
Oh, Copland is
Copland.
great. Yeah.
And apparently it was just it hit at the wrong time, and nobody
Yep.
wanted to take him as like a drama actor.
Yep.
But
See, that's you
Yeah.
get typecasted and all that, and then you try to break out.
hey,
Doesn't work.
at least our small talk before the show really got started.
It's my favorite part of the
Was
show.
movie
I mean, it
related?
revolved all around movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then we're getting into.
I am gonna get us off movies just for a second
Oh,
and just
dang.
talk about my elbows.
I was going to try to segue, but you go ahead.
because you ain't lying, dude.
Oh yeah, it's good.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
It's good.
That's
So,
good stuff.
My knuckles,
right
my
before-
knuckles feel nice.
The show, you were talking about how
My
hands are drying out.
feel good.
It's that time of the year. Well, actually, I guess all throughout the winter, you're
We're getting
dry
old.
skin.
Yeah, dried, cracked knuckles.
Yeah.
It's awful.
So I gave him a little bit of this stuff called Working Hands. O'Keefe's Working Hands.
O'Keefe's.
It kind of sounds a little dirty, and you got them working hands.
I got O'Keefe's hands on me.
Yeah, O'Keefe's
They're
working
working.
hands, but
It is working.
They are working.
They're smooth. Stuff's great though. It is. I mean, it instantly gets rid of dry skin, and it actually heals it. So if you do have cuts, or like I said, when your knuckles or something start to crack, that's when it's best. Put it on there. It soothes it.
Yeah, that
Keeps
happens
the-
when you start getting older.
Keeps them from getting worse.
Yeah,
drier than Burgess Meredith. May he rest in peace. Going back to Rocky.
Yeah.
You tried to tie him in there.
It was
I
an
like that.
Oscar
Try to bring
winning
it back
movie.
to movies. Yeah.
Yep.
And you know what else might be Oscar winning? This movie.
Oh man, that was great.
Maybe
Only
not.
review we've got
Maybe
this
not.
week.
I don't think so.
I was just trying
Only-
to segue back into the
mean, we-
Oscar nominees.
We're
no,
at
this
that
one's
point.
not going to win. I don't think it will either, Sean. But
We're at that point. We got to get into the review. So
Yeah.
the only review we have left after this one is Poor Things, and then we will have covered
all of the best picture
all
nominees.
of the Best Picture nominees.
It's amazing.
So here is our penultimate review, which is The Zone of Interest.
Just a little under 2 weeks away, and we've nearly reviewed every Best Picture nominee this year. Our penultimate Best Picture review is yet another foreign film co-produced by Poland and the United Kingdom. Distributed here in the United States by A24, The Zone of Interest revolves around Rudolf Höss, the Nazi commandant in charge of Auschwitz, and his family as they live their daily lives next door to the concentration camp. Written and directed by Jonathan Glazer, and starring Christian Friedel as SS Commandant Höss, the film is unique in its focus of the everyday life of evil, showing the Höss family as they live their lives with nothing but a brick wall separating them from what could be considered the most heinous place in history, is both jarring and eye-opening. Haas, who historically maintained an apathetic view on his deeds, only ever showing any sign of remorse days before his execution, is played so by Friedel alongside the rest of the Haas family. Their lives are almost relatable in their day-to-day. It is only in moments of what to them are no more than small talk that the audience sees the evil, whether it be distributing Jewish clothing that once belonged to the dead, pondering whether an old Jewish neighbor might be in the camp next door, or the businesslike manner in which Commandant Haas lays out the blueprints for cremation chambers, highlighting the brilliance and ingenuity that went into their design and the equal amounts of evil that also went into them as well. These examples and the film's attention to detail concerning the Haas family's day-to-day is where the movie is most effective, when it shows something almost relatable but makes you stop to realize that in these relatable scenes, a greater evil is being perpetrated. The film's themes and what the movie highlights is as thought-provoking as it is stomach-churning. Sadly though, while I felt Zone of Interest starts strong, it loses impact before it ends. While the attention to detail in the day-to-day affairs helps to really juxtapose and highlight the evil at root in these historic figures, Glazer's focus on these details becomes myopic, failing to add a greater scope to the overall movie. I appreciate the film showcasing the life of the Haas family while not making them sympathetic. The Haas's apathetic attitude, while historically accurate, is all we are left with by the film's end. And I don't mean that I was left apathetic to what happened by this film's end, but that these characters have no arc, growth, or change. This is historically accurate, and I don't suggest changing that, but there is also no narrative story either, leaving only random moments scattered throughout the film to juxtapose the average versus evil. And while this works as a one-time reflection, it doesn't necessarily leave you with anything edifying to return to. With no emotional arc, no character growth, and no general story arc either, the film is just an artistic reminder of everyday evil. Significant, yes, but not as profound as the film presumes itself to be. I give The Zone of Interest 3 out of 4 stars.
Wow. Oh, wait, do we have it? Is it working? I don't even know if it's working.
No, it didn't work last week either.
Are you serious?
No.
I'm sick and tired of Apple. I hate Apple.
That's why I never pushed anything last week. I don't know if you noticed. Obviously not.
I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't. Hold
push
on.
a thing.
We're fixing this right now.
I didn't want to have to keep telling you every show, so I just
the
gave
only
up.
buttons you push are mine.
Yeah.
Oh, don't push my buttons. Let's see if it.
Don't bring me down.
It didn't even launch.
Well, it's dead.
Oh,
there
it
it
goes.
goes.
There it goes.
I'll wait. Is it good?
No, it's good. It should be
Okay.
good now. Yeah, as soon as they pop up. There it
There you go. It kind of was delayed for a minute. There.
Yeah, it did.
It
just
Usually,
maybe now it's
usually
loaded.
they come up a little bit faster than that. Let's try.
Wow.
Yeah, that was
There it
quicker.
is. There it
That was
is.
much quicker.
That's it.
Yeah.
It had to buffer.
It was like, I don't know what you want me to do.
It probably needs an update, and I haven't updated it in forever. But no, 3.5 or no 3.
No,
3.
I did not give it 3.5. It was a low 3, to be honest. But
Well, and in fact, let's go around the table because I gave it 2.5. Sean, what'd you give?
I gave it 2.
yeah,
So we all went down a step each one of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Which is funny. We've all been around the same, but I feel like a lot of the last few reviews we've done, we've all been a little bit different on, but have had some of the same gripes and opinions.
Yeah, and this one in particular, again, I didn't hate it. I didn't loathe it like I did. Well, and I haven't really loathed any of them. Some I've just been apathetic about. Maestro, I didn't really care. But I was at least engaged throughout the film to see what it would offer. I'm trying to think of what was the one right after. No, then there were ones that surprised me. American Fiction surprised me. I didn't really go in with any high expectations of it. Past Lives has been my favorite so far.
Anatomy of a Fall was decently. It wasn't my favorite, but it was well made.
Same thing, kind of walking. I actually I did end up liking Anatomy of a Fall better. I think I ended up giving it 3 or maybe 2.5, but a stronger 2.5 than this one. This, I just felt like, and we were kind of, we do this all the time. We were discussing a little bit of it during the review.
Yeah.
Most of what you described in the review, and as far as what the narrative is driving home as far as its message and its purpose, I do think the movie nails perfectly. But I get that message across, the movie gets it across clearly and well done enough in the first 15 minutes of the movie. I don't need the rest of the hour and 15 that's left. Or hour and a half that's left.
Yeah.
I feel like enough of the angst and the atrocity again, all of the emotional notes that I think the film leaves you with in the end, I received after about 15, 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah,
maybe even a solid half hour.
No, and I think that's completely fair. Honestly, I think this might have worked better as a short film and probably even won an Oscar as a short film. Just because I agree, that was one thing when I walked away. I was like, this movie, even though it's only an hour 45, which isn't terribly long, it's still a bit too long for what it is. Because, like I said, I mentioned in the review that there isn't a real narrative structure. There's a little bit there in what they do, but I don't know. I really appreciate what it was going for, which is why I've settled with the 3. But I fully understand the gripes too about the fact that it is kind of drawn out. There's not a huge narrative structure. It's just them living their daily lives, showcasing how this is what evil looked like. It's not like this heinous, like guy with a twirly mustache. They were living their normal lives while also murdering the Jewish people.
And honestly, real quick, I just want to, because that snapped it right in my head, one of the points I was wanting to make, but I didn't want to spoil it while we weren't actually on the show. That is another thing that I think is very valuable of a lesson to have nowadays.
Yes.
Because I think, if anything, this film gets across the strongest is the complacency. I don't even know if that's the right word. The
being complicit,
the complicity
Yeah.
of being involved in acts of evil.
Yeah.
And for them to have been complicit, but almost in an apathetic way or nonchalant, going along with their day-to-day, and even, to some degree, I mean, there is no secret as to they really did think these, Jews being slaughtered, just over their fence, were dehumanized. Like they didn't care about them. Like they thought of them as lower than, scum. And so it does, I think, speak to how when you allow yourself to get to a certain point where you can allow evil to happen, it shouldn't be any secret that it becomes, you become numb to it. You become desensitized to it, that it does become like normal everyday life, and you can carry on like normal and act like there isn't anything going wrong. Or even over time, there is the one scene a little bit later in the film where he mentions to his wife kind of casually, I was looking at this room full of people and I just thought about gassing them all.
Yeah. How would I do that?
How would I do that?
How would I do that?
Are high.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of brevity there where you're just kind of like, oh, maybe he's getting it. Maybe there's a little bit of...
Well, then, he vomits afterwards. So,
but even then, it's like... Because they kind of sum that up in the end, too, when he's having pains or he's walking down the steps and he's coughing up. He's having these kind of stomach issues. And at first I'm sitting there thinking, maybe it's cancer or he's about to drop dead and there's some kind of karmic ending. Yeah. I'm glad they didn't go that route. I think that would have been...
from breathing in the fumes of dead bodies.
It could be that. Or even the gas that seeped out that got... But it's one of these things where the effects at which the director is conveying, I even... Like I said, pulling clips for the review, some of the scenes that I saw, the behind-the-scenes footage that I saw where they set up cameras in this area that they filmed in, almost in a hidden capacity, so that the actors could just act and carry on as if it was like normal everyday life, and there was just a hidden camera that was like plopped down. And I actually did appreciate that. As far as cinematography, it's not exceptional; it's kind of plain. But that's the point.
Yeah,
the point is if you were just
voyeuristic,
right?
Is what it felt like to me.
You were just dropped down into a normal everyday circumstance with these people. So there's so many things that it got right. But as far as the compelling nature of wanting me to either sit down and revisit this, or to even feel compelled to show it to someone else for an emotional jerk for regarding this topic. I couldn't help but think, Schindler's List does it so much better. And in my mind, that's something that life is beautiful. Exactly. Way more poignant and way more on the nose with something that is so tragic and a beautiful way to tell the story. Whereas this one, I just feel like is a little bit too auteur or also artistic art house regarding the subject matter. And it doesn't necessarily convey what I think it should regarding as such. Sean, what about you?
No, I agree with just about everything you said there. I also kind of lost. You didn't say you lost interest. I kind of lost interest after about the first 20 to 30 minutes because, like you said, though, I did kind of get the gist of what they were going for. One of the things that really disappointed me about the movie was the lack of an emotional pull. Like I it's really weird because you finish the movie and I'm kind of like, well, there's not going to be any acting nods for this movie because there wasn't much. There wasn't any emotion given in the movie, and I think that's what they were going for. Was the lack of emotion is what they were trying to show you. The lack of feeling that these people had towards what they were doing and what's going on around them.
Yeah, it's just another normal day.
Yeah, it's just another normal day. And I agree with Keith that this is what evil's not always, trying to figure out how to bomb the world or how to take over the world. It's literally can be something as just simplistic as not seeing another person as a human. But at the end of the movie, there was the most emotional part for me was seeing the room full of shoes and knowing that okay, there's the real place. This is, and seeing all of those shoes, that's people. Every pair is a person.
Yeah.
And that got me more than anything the film conveyed.
True.
And that was what anytime I see something about World War II, anytime I see something about the Holocaust, it usually jars something in me because I feel so sorry for not just, I mean, it's like I didn't have anything to do with it, but I feel sorry for humanity at that time. I'm just like, where was our humanity at that time? I know the Allies tried to squash that much sooner than we did, but it's just like the fact that
fact that we didn't even know what was going on.
No, yeah, but I'm just the fact that human beings could get so evil and hateful towards another. It always brings something up in me. But like you mentioned, Schindler's List, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, these other movies, they have characters that they build upon, and they show you relationships, just like Schindler and his the Jewish assistant. I forget who played him. Kingsley.
Ben Kingsley.
Ben Kingsley, yeah.
Oh,
the Mandarin. Yeah. He plays him, but it's like, even though like that's a small relationship in that movie, but that relationship makes for some really emotional moments.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this movie had nothing like that to offer other than just you kind of like baffled at their lack of emotion.
Yeah.
And that was what it's disturbing, and I know that's what they were going for, but in terms of a film drawing me in and trying to make me aware and get me emotional about a certain topic, the movie failed. Like, I just couldn't get into it. I liked the cinematography. I liked the actors and what they did, but there was just, I don't know. I just didn't connect with it at all.
Even the scene at the end,
it was bland.
I would agree with you. It's like the jarring moment that it cuts to the actual Holocaust Museum, Auschwitz Museum. I assumed it's Auschwitz because of where the film was based, but it was so jarring where it lands in the movie that at first, my first thought was, did we just end the story?
Yeah.
Of where we were at just to cut to this, to be like, this was the atrocity. And then I thought it was going to cut off. And then it does go back.
Yeah.
But it was so jarring in the sense that it took me out of the moment.
Yeah.
That, like you said, like there were some parts of the emotion because each of the still just, static shots that they have sitting on each of these and I even liked the idea of the parts of the museum where they show the people who come in every day. They dust everything off. They're cleaning it. They're keeping it, again, they're honoring the victims of this horrible, evil that had taken place by just allowing it to be, pristinely upkept for tourists to come through and see, again, how evil humanity can be. Even that set in, I thought, was well done. But there were just certain narrative aspects of the film that I felt like did not land in the proper way that, to me, were so jarring. It took me out of the moment from the movie, and then even in the moment of trying to be realistic, the surreal nature of realism setting in, to then go back And it was like it was such a knee-jerk reaction that it didn't really have the effect I think maybe the director was going for. So that was just another negative. And my final negative of the film, I think, again, because it was an artistic decision, not necessarily terribly done. Or it wasn't poorly executed, but I didn't really think it carried any weight, were the night vision shots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't like that either, to be honest with you.
It didn't really hit home with me. I just really didn't care too much about how they stitched those together throughout the film.
I liked the little storyline it had,
right.
but I didn't know, this doesn't, that was an artistic thing, like you were saying, that I just felt like was only done as Oscar bait, because I was like, I don't know why this needs to be a night vision like this.
Right. Only other than the sense of, and again, it kind of had to be explained to me in the behind the scenes, but because once it was explained to me that, they had set up all of these camera angles and shots at parts of the house where it made it look like, again, you're kind of a voyeur sitting in.
Yeah.
Then it made sense why those shots were like that. But the moment it cuts to it for the first time in the film, I was like, what is this? What the hell kind of filter did they put on this?
I thought the inverted choice was just because like the everyday evil of them doing whatever bad was like regular, and then the night vision kind of inverted. It was an inversion of here she is trying to do something good, which of course ultimately results in something bad anyways. But
in reality, I think it was just him just saying, if these are normal cameras, then this would just be a night vision camera because we're not going to add any kind of coloring or filtering.
I guess I thought like that was kind of. I mean,
I can
don't
see
know,
that,
but
I can see the contrast there. Yeah,
but I mean, again, it's still an artistic choice that I didn't feel was absolutely necessary. That like added to the movie.
Yeah. But there you have it. If you want to check it out, Zone of Interest, 3 out of 4 stars, our official review here on the Red Moon Podcast. And of course, we got one more movie to go.
We got it.
And we got it. I might remind everybody, next week,
we'll have
not
our
only
choices.
have Poor Things, where we are going to see Dune Part 2. So we're going to have that review as well. And we will have our picks.
I knew we had to have the Oscar picks, so
we got to have our picks of who we think will win and who we want to win. We're going to discuss those next week. We'll have that.
It's going to be a big show.
Set in stone.
So yeah, that's going to be a lot.
Hopefully no breaking news.
Yeah.
We don't need that. We just want to run through the Oscar
headlines
stuff.
a little bit.
No headlines.
It'll basically be those 2 reviews and our
Unless
picks.
Alec Baldwin shoots someone else. Then, you
just never know.
And then at that point,
true.
I mean, it's like, what are you going to do?
I'm glad you brought that up because one of our headlines is we're talking about the Rust. One of the Rust trials
that's
started
not the first
with the
one,
armorer.
though, correct?
No.
Okay.
This is just the one with Hannah Gutierrez Reed.
We'll
talk about that. We'll get into that with our headlines.
Hop back into Dune a little bit and talk about Denny first.
Yes, we are. So let's roll that headline open. That's right. We're talking about Denny.
Denny.
Oh, there it is.
You know, I don't like Denny's.
No.
I haven't been to a Denny's in forever.
There's people who do. I don't understand those people.
To me, he's always going to be Dennis Villeneuve.
I'm with you. Every time I read it in my head, I want to say Villeneuve.
We took a Frenchman and we made him
Spanish.
Yeah,
that's right.
We DEI'd him.
I mean, look at him. He's got like the black hair and a little bit of a darker. Yeah, his skin tone's a little bit darker than.
He's got
French
a little
people
bit of
are
that,
pale. Yeah,
he's got the innery too going on.
Yeah, I'm like, I thought he was Hispanic. I didn't think he was French.
But no, we are. We're talking about
because I don't like the French.
Denis Villeneuve. We're talking about him and some comments that he made on the press tour for his latest outing of Dune Part 2. And he basically has said that he is upset that movies have been corrupted by TV.
Yeah.
They got all this fast talking, camera cutting and dialogue, and he just thinks that people have become too obsessed with the TV type made content, and it has corrupted movies. So let's dive in a little bit, talk about it. Some of his comments there. Do we agree? Do we disagree?
It's funny. I mean, there's things that absolutely I agree with him on, but I'm going to get into the disagreement first a little bit, because the TV thing, like, while I get what he's coming from, and even the interviewer mentions like how there's been like a recent golden age of television that movies are copying off of, and I'm like, well, I agree with that, because in some ways, maybe not very recently, but back around Breaking Bad and when AMC, Game of Thrones on HBO.
Walking Dead on AMC.
There were
Mad
shows
Men.
that were more cinematic and are still more cinematic than the movies we're getting. Dialogue or no dialogue, because it's not necessarily the dialogue of Breaking Bad, which is phenomenal, but there's so much more to that show that makes it much more cinematic than anything Marvel's put out in the last 5 years. So I think in that sense, it's like he's blaming television for something that isn't exactly television's fault either, that Hollywood has just gotten lazy and that they are just trying to dangle keys in front of audiences' faces. And that's where I think the fast dialogue and fast scenes, just like Marvel, come in. It's like, oh, we don't have to make serious movies anymore because fans love us. We can just put any goofy thing in from the comic and expect fans to eat it up, no questions asked. And then they're finding out that's not true. So that's my opinion, just specifically regarding the television aspect. Now, the dialogue is something different.
Well, I want to read his quote on that. He specifically says, "Frankly, I hate dialogue. Dialogue is for the theater and television. I don't remember movies because a good line. I remember movies because of a strong image. I'm not interested in dialogue at all. Pure image and sound, that is the power of cinema. But it is something not obvious when you watch movies today. Movies have been corrupted by television. Because TV had the golden age and execs execs thought film should copy its success. In a perfect world, I'd make a compelling movie that doesn't feel like an experiment, but does not have a single word in it either." This is where I think he's pontificating too much and exaggerating. People would leave the cinema and say, wait, there was no dialogue? But they won't feel the lack of it. So it's interesting because I think he is exaggerating a little bit here, maybe for the sake of articulating his point a little bit more and hitting it home.
I don't know. I would watch a dialogue-free movie if it's compelling.
You're right. I don't think his main point here is that he doesn't want. Obviously, he has dialogue in Dune. It's not a silent film.
No. I'm talking about like if he makes another like a new movie. Because he's mentioned he wants to make a movie with no dialogue, and I mean, if he did that, I would watch it as long as it's good.
It's funny because we were talking about before, the show, that there's been several movies that have recent past that I can think of. I mean, even if you want to go the silent film route, you have The Artist that won Best Picture, but even sooner,
technically, I guess there is dialogue when the boxes pop up. Like if he's meaning like nothing, like you can't read nothing, you don't hear nothing, like there's no word like dialogue whatsoever.
I mean, you sort of there, but there's lines of dialogue in whatchamacallit. See, that's where I don't think he's making the comparison of a true 1-to-1.
No. I'm just like, if he makes a movie like that, I think it can work. Maybe just because there's movies that are close, like No One Will Save You, or even WALL-E, which has no dialogue except for a few parts with the humans.
And No One Will Save You is the one I was thinking of most recently.
Yeah, and I do think
there was an instance about 30 minutes, 40 minutes into that film, I was just like, I'm hearing noises, but she hasn't said a thing.
Yeah.
Hardcore Henry, when he's just running around, has a lot less dialogue. And I think if you make a movie like maybe 90 minutes or less, like you're not going to get a 3-hour Dune like epic with no dialogue.
Yeah.
But I think if you make a movie that's like, it's funny because he's talking about TV, but it's like a movie like that would almost have to be kind of fast paced. But if the visuals are good enough and the narrative through the visuals works, like you have to have a visual narrative, I think it could work. But I do think, like you're saying, he's pontificating a little bit with some of this, because I don't agree also that you don't remember movies for dialogue.
I was going to say that's exactly what I was going to say.
Quote movies all the time.
I was going to say, anybody who quotes a memorable line from a movie, and that's how
life is like a box of chocolate.
That's how we started the show, talking about Twister.
Yes.
But I'm even thinking of, and we've talked about this, I think I've talked about this multiple times on the show, I still think, even in the fast, action-packed Marvel movies, that people seem to, like, I think the majority of people love those films. There's certain people that are just like, oh, those are theme park films, but whatever. I'm when Captain America says, "Let's go get this son of a bitch." Yeah. That one line makes half that movie. Like I remember that. I definitely walk away and remember that.
Falcon comes out and he's like, "On your left."
On your left.
That's a huge moment. And I mean, I mentioned to Brandon before the show, like the monologue in Braveheart, Aragorn's monologue in Return of the King. Like those are epic moments, and it's like sometimes like dialogue is
very important. And honestly, I think that's where the bigger divide is here. Is I'm like, I understand yes, he's talking about personal taste. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not arguing that, but I do think sometimes when your ego gets a little bit ahead of you and
True.
you're on a power trip of like, oh, I have a new movie coming out, and like, again, I think some of this is just his exaggeration. But
I'm an artiste. I
Right.
don't need dialogue.
Right. and that's where I feel like he's kind of straying that line of like, I want to take him seriously, but I also want to say as much as pretty as your films are, like I told you all this, I just watched Dune again, in preparation for seeing, Dune 2. And even then there were some times where I just felt like it dragged a little bit in terms of the moments that he's setting up emotionally. Yeah, the cinematography is gorgeous, but even there are certain scenes where I feel like the dialogue is kind of, maybe because I feel like he's taking a back seat to dialogue and thinking it's not as important or as compelling. There's not as much of a focus on it. But it was funny because him and I guess Nolan have been on this kick of, just patting each other on the back because, of course, they're both,
They're both artistes.
They're both artistes.
And they're both currently in the spotlight.
Yes, and they're both
Yeah.
saving cinema.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. A lot of
We make thought-provoking originals.
well, no, not just that, but film in general. I mean, they have been, I think, huge proponents of not only using film but using it to its full breadth and ability of making something that is definitely worth going to see on the biggest screen. So I can't argue with them there in that regard. But it's funny because I think I even read something this past week about Christopher Nolan was joking around about how he was kind of jealous that his brother came up with the line in The Dark Knight of you either live or you live long enough to, or wait, hold on.
You either die a
A
hero,
hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And he said that's the one line he thought he brushed it off when it, because he was like, is that true? I don't know. And he's like, sadly, he's like, we look at today's day and age, and he's like, every day it grows more and more true. And he's like, I'm kind of jealous that he came up with it at the time. But that tells you right there are some times where, I can agree with you. Sometimes less is more. You don't need a lot of dialogue and emotion and acting.
The Passion of the Christ has very little dialogue, and what there is all in Latin.
And it has to be very, very particular of what they use. Not only to be careful in adapting the original, text and the scripture, but also in making sure that, it's not overly emotional, that you're not adding to it. You're not taking away from what is being conveyed.
It's plenty emotional without words.
Yes.
That's the thing. And it's well done.
Right.
But I think with that movie, Gibson had a good mix of letting the actors emote in a way that tells you what they're feeling and what they're thinking and saying and what's happening in the scene without as many words.
Yes.
And that I appreciate that, especially as somebody who hates subtitles, because it's like if you're going to have a movie with subtitles, then go ahead and keep the dialogue to a minimum, but make the...
Truth be told, that's what I liked about Past Lives. Like, there are several scenes of dialogue between them, but one, they're never overly... complex or they don't exhaust you as an audience member, but there's so many scenes where just them looking at each other, you immediately know the emotion that's being conveyed.
Well, and film is a visual medium, and in that sense, I do agree with Denis in that, yes, you should be able to show part of the story without having to tell it. That doesn't mean that you don't need dialogue, and like I said, I think many scenes, like you're mentioning with Passion of the Christ, they work and are much more powerful because there isn't dialogue, because you're seeing the severity of what's happening and letting it sink in. You're letting the moment sink in, and the visual storytelling convey it, rather than having somebody just sit there and be like, well, and then Jesus drug his cross. Like if you're just watching Pilate tell his wife, it's like it's not powerful anymore when Pilate's just sitting here. It's like, well, we did this, this, and this to him, and you don't ever show it.
Yeah.
So in those ways, I do agree. Like you don't have to have dialogue, but
and I kind of come from the school of what I've heard Tarantino talk about before, which I typically agree
someone
with him.
who's amazing with dialogue.
Well, but he even says it's the last thing. He's like, the dialogue is the cherry on top. He's like, when you can have the good conversation back and forth, he's like, it comes naturally because you've built a world in which these characters are lived in and breathed out. And I mean, I think of something like Inglourious Bastards, where talk about not only subtitles, but I mean, Christoph Waltz's whole performance in how he goes from German into English, even into French, and it's all ways in which you're using dialogue and language, even, and that in that kind of subtextual way of conveying a character and
Yeah.
the story. And it's like, yes, there are times where no doubt movies, especially I think ones that lean on them too heavily, can be verbose and have way too much in it. A perfect example of one that has very minimal dialogue and where it only matters and counts, No Country for Old Men. I watched that recently, and so much of that movie is just, again, almost like something out of Denis' library of just great cinematography that sets up the story. The characters carry out in the way they carry themselves. They carry out the scene, and it's phenomenal.
There's no dialogue or a score for that one.
Yeah,
which is, impressive. Yeah,
it's fantastic.
There is dialogue, but
right.
minimum. Yeah,
very, very minimal. Right, and I think if anything, more so. Yes, he's basically saying how much he doesn't want to depend on it, and I think he's saying, like, of course there needs to be some there to convey, like, there's actual conversations going on. People aren't just going to stare at each other.
Yeah.
It's funny because one of the big plot developments or devices in the story of Dune is the voice.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of interesting that it's like, well,
but it's minimal,
right?
Which is what I like about it.
True.
Yeah. Even when the Bene Gesserit mother is talking in their language, it's minimal.
Yeah. Right.
But it's like, again, if you're gonna have minimal dialogue, it has to be meaningful dialogue.
Right.
It has to be dialogue that hits.
But there are times too where I think, and this is what I've come to see a lot of times, where some think they've got that silver bullet, no pun intended, of the right kind of words that they have written in a minimalistic way, and a lot of times it either sounds cliche or doesn't come across well, because I think they're trying to cut too far back. And sometimes
I see that.
In that regard, I'm like, okay, now you're almost selling yourself too short, and you're making dialogue so far in the back, background, that it kind of it does end up.
It hampers either like the flow, that like you either get bored or people don't understand what's going on.
Right, you lose context.
Yeah.
And if you lose context, you're losing the story. Or again, sometimes it can sound recycled, or it sounds too generic, like something you've already seen before.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is where really good writing and dialogue play. And I think the bigger question I have about this is, all this being said, I haven't read the books. Keith, I know you've read it once and you're currently rereading it. A guy at work was telling me, he loves the books, but the book is so dialogue laden that why would Denny adapt a movie that is so dialogue heavy, or a book that is so dialogue heavy?
I think there's a lot of
into the movie if he doesn't like dialogue.
See, there's a lot of internal dialogue, like what they're thinking. Now, as far as like them talking to each other, I feel like that's about the same as the movie. But there is a lot of internal monologue, like Lady Jessica's internal monologue, Paul's father, Leto, Paul, like all of them have a lot of internal like dialogue, like what they're thinking about. And now how you convey that on film is a difficult process. Do you just turn that into outright dialogue, or do you try to convey it through their acting and emotions? Yeah.
And that's the task at hand. And I mean, again, it is kind of interesting because I know that I'm very intrigued to see how we not only all walk out of part 2 when we go see it, but also even in the difference between someone who's not read the book versus someone who has, and from part 2 knowing how much apparently they have to cram in to about the same runtime as part 1. I'm very interested to see, not only is it a full story arc, at least for one book, that is finished, is it finished well and paced well enough that it doesn't feel rushed, or also that it doesn't feel like it leaves out too much. I have a feeling that Sean and I will probably be in the camp where we'll be happy if it fleshes out the story that has been started from the first part. But ultimately, I have a feeling that people may be either disappointed or somewhat be like, if you're a real fan of the book, there's probably going to be some stuff that it's like it leaves out for you, and you may not be too happy.
Because I mean, even Lord of the Rings has things that like are changed or left out. So for me, it's basically whether it follows the themes and characters and are true to those, and how that's adapted.
Not so much every little detail.
Yeah, because I mean, it's a movie. You do have to make some changes. You do have to cut some stuff out. Otherwise, you're going to have a 5-hour movie.
Right. I mean, there's plenty of differences just between Dune Part 1 and the 1984. What year
It's
is that?
the
movie?
80s. I think it's
Yeah.
84.
In the original film, and that's there's a lot of differences. But even you can watch the 80s film, and if you've seen Dune Part 1,
That one was David Lynch, isn't it?
Yeah.
you can watch that film and you can follow along. Like, oh yeah, that happened in Dune Part 1. Like it's Villeneuve. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Villeneuve.
Denny. He has
Tennis.
done a good job of keeping it on par with the original film, which is also, I mean, it's based on the book, but they had to cram. That was like a 2.5 hour film.
It's 2 hours and 17 minutes.
2
They
hours.
crammed the
old
whole
one.
book
Yeah,
into,
they crammed the whole thing into that one.
Dang.
It passes over a lot of time. Like there's a lot of time passes in the
It
original
cuts a
film.
lot of stuff out
Yeah.
from the novel that at least Denny is trying to, like, there's still stuff he's cut, but I mean,
Yeah,
again, you
you have
do
to.
have
Yeah.
to.
Well, and that's what I'm intrigued to find out, though, is how much of that is crucial. Because look, everybody knows if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings and the films, like Tom Bombadil didn't make it into the extended edition, and even the extended editions, there's times where, like,
The scoring of the Shire is not in either
Right.
edition.
it's hinted at.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't happen in the theatrical.
Showering.
But it's like, it's so interesting because I don't know. I mean, at least Lord of the Rings is 3 books, and there are 3 movies, and they're each 3 hours long. So you could at least surmise that most of the books are in the films, and at least a lot of things that may be glossed over or shortcuts, you could argue are, in the grand arc of the story, don't need to take place. I'm curious to see what the ending of Part 2 for Dune.
Yeah.
If that's the same case.
I mean, part 1 was already longer than the 80s movie, so just having a part 2 in of itself definitely should allow more detail than the original had.
And I asked you before the show, I'd asked you about Part 1, how much of the book did it cover? And you said it covers about half?
A little less, I think. I mean, it covers most, like, because that's the book's broken into, like, 3 sections, like that. It's called book 1, 2, and 3. And, like, a good, like, maybe... Like, book 1 is almost half of the whole book. I mean, not quite, but it is almost half of the whole book. So,
And it covers most of Part 1?
well, it does cover all of like book, like part 1 covers
It's
all of like
book 1?
So
Okay.
part 2 should cover books 2 and 3.
Okay.
Like, not the literal books, like as the first
Yeah.
novel is broken
Yeah.
up.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see. Our review will be next week. But right now, again, I don't think movies are corrupted by TV. I think they both have their own.
Corrupted by stupidity, but
Well, that's true, but that's the whole
that's just Hollywood.
multimedia arts in general right now. I mean, ultimately, look, TV is a medium on its own that serves a purpose just like movies are, and books and video games. They all have their narrative and artistic way of approaching and adapting themselves to audiences
Yep.
and reaching them in an emotional way and in a moving way. The best thing about those mediums is, what does a creator do in honing in what that medium is best for? And sometimes you have, booms, and other times you have busts when it comes to that kind of content. And I hope Doom Part 2 sits on my list as a boom and as a good thing. But we've been seeing a lot of duds lately in the movie industry, and even in the TV industry, because I love that they called it the golden age, and they're making it sound like that's past tense.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
right now at this point with
I
the
would
streaming
agree. It's
services,
definitely past tense.
we've got a lot of content and not focus on a lot of quality, which I definitely think is an issue. You're getting ready to punch something over there. I don't know.
He's
I
deciding.
don't know. Yeah, I haven't picked one.
He's been deciding for quite some time.
Well, because it has to fit with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking while you're talking so that I
Yeah.
can, because I can't like hit it and it's something you said 10 minutes ago. So I kind of have to.
I was gonna
pick
say,
while you discuss.
The next headline I wanted to move on to was the president of Disney Motion Picture Studios exits.
No, no.
Do you think this was a forceful exit, or was this a
for sure.
leisurely?
Yes.
I don't know. The way the article reads,
It reads
seems
like it was leisurely. I think it may have been like amicable, like both sides. But I do think,
because he's moving on to greener pastures, apparently.
yeah, that's always true too. I just wish it was forceful, because that would be one good sign. That still doesn't mean that they're turning around in any way. I just think when you look at it, what he was in charge of, especially it's saying that like he was basically the guy who came up with the idea of let's make the animated movies and we'll make live action adaptations of every single one of them. Whether it was forceful or not, I do think it's good to get rid of him. Now, who they replace him with may not be any better, which I know they said the co-president of Fox Searchlight, is now going to take over he's going to be the new title as president of Disney's live action.
David Greenbaum.
Yes, David Greenbaum. He was co-president with Steve Asbell, who is going to continue to serve as 20th Century Studio president, and Greenbaum will now be Disney live action. Which, I mean,
this article says he's going to stay working with Disney, just not...
No, not the one guy's gone.
Bailey is gone.
Bailey has stepped down. He will continue to work with Disney on a project that is currently in production.
Well, that's just the Tron project.
Yeah.
He's wrapping up
Tron,
this Tron project he's working on, and they said it comes full circle because Tron Legacy was
serving
how he
as producer.
Started with Disney years ago, and now he's finishing his tenure at Disney on Tron. But they make it sound like it's a peaceful divorce. He's leaving. He's going on. I'm trying to say, he's been an incredibly important member of the studio's creative team for well over a decade. He and his team have brought to the screen iconic stories and moments that have delighted fans around the world and will stand the test of time. I know he'll continue to do great things, and I couldn't be happier that he's staying on as a producer for Tron. So the fact that they're letting him stay on, it's almost announcing as if
it's not really a boot. It's more like, hey, I'm ready to leave, and which is very well could be the case, especially when you're looking at who's replacing him too. Because while they have made, I guess, quality movies for Fox under like what critics in Hollywood considers quality, one of them is currently a producer for Poor Things, Greenbaum and Matthew Greenfield. Okay, they produced Poor Things, which of course is an Oscar nominee. They also produced The Shape of Water, which was awful. So it's one of those things where it's like, you're just replacing him with more of the same. So
and I do think it's kind of it's interesting because no doubt the downturn of the studio in terms of adapting all of these live action remakes from their classic cartoons, I think, has been where they rave in this article about how many he was part of that were successful and how many billions of dollars he brought.
3?
No. I mean, there were several.
They did. I know they
Jungle Book, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, I meant okay. You're right. There were many that were successful. I meant 3 were good.
Right. No, I'm talking about sheer success.
Yes,
but then, of course, they don't mention the fact, or they sort of hint at and mention the last year in the last round of Disney remake classics that they've done have been flops, and they have not turned out so well. So it's almost in a way that I feel like it was a kind of mutual parting of the ways of, well, hey, you brought in this, amount of money, but now it seems like that's no longer our focal point. We're moving on to greener pastures. Yeah, who knows what, The Shape of Fish, and freaking Poor Things, which we haven't reviewed yet.
I don't
know.
But
I already know. I mean, Yorgos Lanthimos is out there anyway, and who knows? I highly doubt it's.
I'm leery of it.
It's not going to be woke.
Yeah.
So, I highly doubt it. It's definitely, or I highly believe it's going to be woke.
I welcome a change of any type of leadership in Disney, just because like maybe these new people will get away from the live action adaptations and be like, oh, we don't need those anymore. They're garbage. Let's do something new. That'd be great. But then again, the mindset is, even if they do something new, is it still going to be woke? Because most likely so. So even whatever they come up with may not be worth watching.
No, I would agree. I don't know. It just, Disney has so much. They've lost so much respect, and they've lost so many people in terms of, even looking forward to what they have coming around the corner. It's unfortunate that the brand has just been tarnished to no end. I really do think it's just a slow burn as far as continually more people dropping off. I don't think they've lost, obviously, as much as they should to really have to take a hard turn. But the thing is you look, the money dries up sooner rather than later. You can only come out with so many flops or produce so many things that nobody wants to watch and see. We know that the streaming networks in general are hurting across the board because of how hard it is to be profitable. So Disney's got to make some right moves here, and just throwing it over to somebody who to me, this kind of partnership with Greenfield seems more like what Apple has done in terms of buying up and producing content from notable people in Hollywood without actually really knowing. I kind of in an opposite subject matter regarding Apple. I've heard some people off the cuff in the games industry scoff at them because they're like, Apple is the number one platform for gaming in the world because of smartphones. But yet even with the Apple Arcade, a lot of like game studios are kind of scoffing because they're like, they just treat us like we're redheaded stepchildren. They don't really want to invest in gamers and in becoming a gaming platform.
No, they just want all the stuff that pops ads up every freaking
right.
Well, the
5
Apple
minutes.
Arcade doesn't have ads or in-app purchases.
But it's interesting because it's like, but almost all of them are games that are not. You're not looking for a Death Stranding.
Oh, no.
A narrative game, a Tomb Raider, whatever
They
it
got
may
Sonic
be.
Dash or whatever that is.
There you go.
It's like Temple Run, but with Sonic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been around for years. But I mean,
That's a hardcore gaming right there.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
and I think it's just interesting because when you see any big business want to dive into, because there's rumor now that Apple's dropping out of their finally calling it quits on their electric car after so many years, and they're turning all the resources to AI. And I'm like, again, just like with the Vision Pro, I'm like, are you just trying to jump on the next big wave instead of creating it? And part of where I feel like a lot of where the movie industry has been, especially when you consider the woke and the DEI crap that has just been shoveled down your throats over the last several years, it's hard to get away from that trap of actually creating something compelling that makes viewers want to watch your content or be intrigued by what you're going to produce next. And because it's been just it felt like shovelware just pushed out there in the ether of be a consumer, consume everything. And so much of it's just not quality. It may be quality in terms of the way it's shot or the sound production is fine. Like it's definitely far better than what we used to get in terms of, technical quality, but in terms of story and substance, it's hard to come by anymore because there's just so much out there to wade through the garbage to find something that is really worth your time. So Disney's got a long way to go. I don't think this is boding well at all. I mean, it's could have said it better myself. Yeah.
What pisses me off about them is they come out with we're letting this person go or we're making a change in this area, and it's not just the fact that they're replacing those people with the people who have the same ideologies. It's the fact that they still haven't admitted that they went wrong in any way. That's what I think. Even these articles that we were just looking at, I was looking at another one. Both of them talk about the guy, Sean Bailey, but then they go right on to say, like, oh, well, over the
how much
years,
money he
over
brought
the years
in,
that he's been there, he's brought in $7 billion to
Yep.
Disney with the remakes and stuff over the last 15 years, I think is what one of them said. But I'm like, that's again, they're praising the guy. And that's fine if he's stepping down of his own free will and not being asked to step down. Either way, I feel like if you really want fans to come back to the House of Mouse, you're going to have to at some point admit that, well, maybe we got off the rails a little bit, but now we're going to try to put the train back on the track.
Yep.
And they still haven't done that. When you're just letting people go and then replacing them with the same people and praising the people that you let go and not saying that person kind of led us in the wrong direction a little bit, or maybe we were wrong in hiring them, but we're going to right that. We're hiring this person.
Right.
We really have confidence that they can pull things back. And
let's be honest too. Most of these like glorifying rave reviews, or at least like, oh well, let's look at all the good they've done. Immediately, like it puts a sour taste in my mouth because I know it's coming from the journalist, quote unquote, that is writing this dribble. And really what it comes down is to like you said, it's this backloaded way of saying, well, we know he's got to be pushed out because they've seen failure. But if we highlight what the failure is, then immediately that's going to give
look like failure.
Well, no, those people are going to come in from the back door and say, well, this is why, because of, it's the woke garbage. They can't leave that opening because then you have the social justice
Well,
warriors
if
on
you
the
admit
front
that's
lines.
the failure, you have to get rid of it. It's
Exactly.
and they don't want to get rid of
They
it.
can't.
So, yeah.
They can't admit that that's what people aren't interested in, because the moment they do, their ideology takes a crap. And they can't admit that. They can't throw the ideology away because it's not an ideology to them. It's a religion. And so the religion has to be defended at all costs, which means if somebody just happens to go by the wayside or go on to another part of the, another studio somewhere, they're going on to greener pastures. They've outgrown their spot here. So they got to move on. It's always this tiptoeing around what really needs to be said. And look, to the company's detriment. At the end of the day, because they've either got to be straight up honest with their shareholders, who they're, that's their fiduciary responsibility. And then you also have the other instance of saying, are you going to believe in this nonsense yourself to where you're going to keep following down the same path and bankrupting to where your shareholders not only leave, but they dump you, and then your stock really goes up, belly up, and then all of a sudden you've just bankrupt the company? I mean, at the end of the day, you got to eat the crap you're shoveling. You have to. And we'll see what happens with Disney in the years to come. But so far, I've not seen any evidence whatsoever that they're willing to right the course, that they're willing to right the ship. None. All right. I guess we can put a feather in that cap and move on. Real quick, just want to mention the last headline here. We just mentioned it at the top of the show. Briefly, just want to discuss that the Rush trial begins for the armorer. That's Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. Of course, she's admitting not guilty. They're in trial right now. It's a he said, she said game as far as she's pointing the finger now at the place where,
like this.
Yeah. Wait. Oh, whoa, watch out. Whoa, it might be loaded. No blanks in that one. Gotcha, partner. It's something like a grandpa. Oh, you got me.
Gotcha, partner.
Are you not entertained? But no, she is. Yeah, the defense and the prosecution playing a back and forth. He said, she said.
Yeah.
The defense on her side is saying that no, this is part of the. And they did show some kind of troubling pictures of the place where they got the fake ammunition, and then also just I guess where the props were stored. I mean, it looks like it's
a closet.
In shambles.
They said they found like 6 live rounds on set when they investigated. So
and then I'm just sitting here and I'm like, to me, this seems like every single party involved, from Alec Baldwin to her to the person.
I think whole production, all of it, and
just negligence all around. They should all be charged with manslaughter.
Baldwin, as an executive producer, it's like, sorry, bud, like that's part of your job is to make sure things are. And I think the significance of this case will reflect like what we may see with Baldwin's case, how this goes and how they charge her. And I know he'll say, well, that was her job, so she should bear that burden. It's not my job.
And I have a feeling that's
he's a word that I can't say on here, but
and I honestly think that she's going to get the harsher sentence.
Oh yeah,
he's going to get a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's not the famous actor here.
Well, then you read about them like texting about like getting high like the night before.
I love this part.
Yeah. And I'm just like, look, when your job is to make sure people don't die and bullets are empty, it's like, if you want to go smoke some grass somewhere, like, you do that like way like after the production's ended or whatever. I don't know.
This is my thing with the marijuana thing is, and I agree. It's like, if it's legal in your state or whatever, however it is, if you want to go do that in private, that's fine. These are the same people, though, that are trying to get marijuana legalized everywhere because you can't be addicted to it. It doesn't inhibit your decision making and all this stuff. You can smoke weed and drive, and it's not the same thing as drinking. But now they're trying to blame it on her negligence on smoking weed. And I'm like, well, make up your mind. Can weed cause that or not?
Right. Yeah. No, you're right.
According to their rules, she could go smoke a bowl of weed. Right. And go on to work and do a great job. Yeah,
and that's what. No, you're right. Exactly. It's hypocrisy, especially the narrative that we hear anymore.
Oh nowadays. Yeah.
It is very much you can just it loosens me up. I mean, Snoop Dogg talking about it.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
But
Look,
it is.
you shouldn't drink and drive. You shouldn't drink and do your job.
Exactly.
Same thing with weed. Like, no, like, I'm sorry. Especially, again, when your job could cause their life.
And look,
I would prefer you
they,
be sober.
I know they would argue that, oh, well, it was the night before. She wasn't high the day up. Look, but here's the thing. The moment it's implied that you're negligent about
it's a
the
questionable,
atmosphere that you are working in,
Yeah.
then immediately it is a situation of, did it impair your judgment? Not necessarily. That's what I think they're trying to showcase, is not that the weed impaired her judgment. It was that
It's an environment where
she shouldn't have
all
had
around.
it, or
Well,
even
an environment where that's allowed.
and the fact that she shouldn't have been depending on it while she was on the job, even the night before.
you don't want to be in, like, prepping for surgery and your open heart surgeon is just like outside puffing on whatever and just comes in like, no, like, you don't want that. And the same thing here, whether you think, oh, it was just the night before, it's the whole environment.
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
said.
I don't care if it's the night before. When you're on a film set, you're at work.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, they could call her in the middle of the night and say, "We need you up and ready in 3 hours. We got good weather coming today. It's going to be we're going to shoot this early because the weather changed or whatever." I mean, it could be anything like that. They need to be able to do their job at any time. They shouldn't be out drinking or smoking.
No, I agree. I mean, if anything, to me, the casual nature at which the texts are back and forth showcase
How'd the blaze sesh go? I'm still smoking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
Wow.
that's what I'm saying.
You got to check this ammunition in an hour. I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And clearly,
we done by then.
it's incredibly damning in terms of a jury trial, which is what
Yeah.
they're trying. All they're trying to do is pass it off so that she does seem like she's the one that's mainly culpable.
They want
He's been smoking.
Well, I was
He's got-
choking on my water.
Look, not on the job.
I
Damn
was
it.
choking on my
Stuff will kill you
water.
too.
There's vodka in here. I'm lying.
Gosh sakes! You got any guns on you?
You got lead poisoning from that Stanley thermos.
It's a Contigo.
Oh,
It's
never
a
mind.
Contigo.
Now they're good. They're lead free.
That's right.
I
They're,
know that brand.
They're stainless steel, or so it says.
But anyways, Keith, I'm sorry. You were saying.
No, I was just in general, like you said, the whole environment when you see how they're storing weapons and how they found 6 live rounds on set, and then you hear people say, like, you see these texts of,
Right.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go light up, or I'm gonna go get high.
That to me,
It's just-
that would be my thing. Is
Yeah.
I don't care if it's legal and it was offset or you weren't on the job. Fine, okay. But to me, it sets the precedent of the negligence from all parties involved, even from Baldwin himself.
Yeah.
Because the fact is that it seems like no one was taking this seriously.
I forgot my train of thought, but that's what it was when we cut off. The aspect of her taking I do agree with that this is mainly, let's make her look as guilty as possible because she's the armorer, and then Baldwin can use that in his case to say, hey, see, it was all her.
Yep.
I was just the poor innocent actor
You're her boss.
who pulled the trigger.
And her performance reflects poorly on the boss.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the whole environment reflects
Yeah.
on the production company and who's in
The
charge.
fact that there were live rounds on the set at all
Yeah.
is just an actual, like, complete, just, again, it's carelessness, recklessness, and the tragic circumstance of killing Helena Hutchins would not have happened had anyone actually been acting like an adult on that film set. And I think every single one of them should not just be charged with manslaughter and the other many charges that they're facing, but they should definitely be convicted of manslaughter. All 3 of these parties involved. But that's
What'd you do?
That's
Baldwin
What'd you do?
to the armorer.
Gosh sakes. All right, I think we're ready to move on to our final segment of the night. That's our relationships topic.
What?
Let's get into it.
Let me tell you about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees and the moon up above. And a thing called love.
Oh, yeah, I was going to push that too after that.
I thought y'all would like that.
Just
Don't y'all
ruined
love
it.
when I do that?
Just ruined it.
I could play it again.
Yeah, go for it.
Let me tell you about the birds
And the bees and the flowers and the trees.
Give everybody
the
a seizure.
moon up above
and a thing called love.
Anybody tuned into this segment probably just
broken.
tuned out.
They're
They're
just
just
like
like, it's like there's
broken.
just a cacophony of whatever happening.
right.
I'm out.
They're just, I mean, if they're Hannah Gutierrez Reed, they're just high and they're in their jacuzzis having a good time.
Man, this
Having
song's
a blaze
amazing.
Having that blaze session.
Blaze. Blaze of glory.
That's right. I say,
Actually, it'd be hilarious if
Alec
just
Baldwin went out in a blaze of glory.
randomly they were like, actually, we do have to charge you with something else. It turns out there was a forest fire the next day and a lot of brush that was dried out.
It turns out you were using way too much chlorine
And it
in
was
that
bi-
jacuzzi.
They'll get
It's
off.
against the EPA standards.
They'll
They will.
they'll both get off for killing Helena Hutchins, but they'll nail them for starting a forest.
That's
yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
That's
in
right.
the middle of a desert.
I'm telling you. It's
Like
like,
that-
yeah, that joint you lit,
tumbleweed
it
burn.
just, I
Yeah.
mean, come on, Smokey the Bear. Come on.
That's what we need. Only you could prevent forest fires. I would never use that. I say we need that, but like I don't know when I would ever push that button.
Yeah.
I'm not putting that
Just
on there.
once.
Well, that's why I
Yeah, I'm
don't.
not.
That's why I would never.
Let's talk about relationships.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah,
Let's talk about
What
it.
about them,
We're talking about managing.
managing.
man? That's
I'm
not
trying
what
to
you're talking
read
about.
and punch graphics up. It's just hanging out in person or digitally.
I like this.
Yeah,
This is a little different because in our culture and this day and age,
you can do both.
you can do you.
And now you can put on a VR headset and hang out that way. So
Yeah,
like, hey,
that's true.
You have somebody's persona.
got like a whole yeah.
What are those things called for the Vision Pro?
I don't know.
I think they are called personas.
It used to be an avatar, but they changed it.
What was
no,
the?
I don't know on the Vision Pro. I'm talking about on the Meta. Meta used to have an avatar. Now they got something new.
See, and Xbox was an avatar too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had avatars. PlayStation used to have like was it Home or whatever, like the whole like
PlayStation Home.
Yeah.
like second like you could it kind of was like Second Life,
That
but it
didn't
was just a
last, did
club
it? That
online.
never made it out
No.
of beta.
No,
It didn't.
No, I got on it once and I was like, this is
This is stupid.
dull as
Well,
hell.
it was so
Can't do
freaking
anything.
You just-
slow.
Yeah, it was
like
bad.
I remember I loaded it up once,
Yeah.
and I even went through like the creation of your avatar,
yeah.
and like it.
And
Once
it's
I
just
even got
like
it
a
created, it was
digital bar that like
Yes.
I'm just like I'd rather just go somewhere real.
Well,
Yeah.
and, like you couldn't like you would have had to have bought like an external keyboard to even like type and talk to people. Like
Yeah.
the way in which you communicated was terrible. Like it was just bad. It was a bad
It's
experience.
funny.
VR, it's so. I mean, VR is definitely the way to go if you want to hang out. Like if you want to just hang out digitally,
Yeah.
like just sit around and talk, because you can watch a movie together
Yeah.
in the same room and I mean physically, wave at each other. And I mean with the new Quest, it's like the Apple Vision where it can see your mouth and your eyes, and you can wink and stuff, and your character winks. Like it's that's cool that you can do that. Hanging out digitally in a chat room with a keyboard and all of that, I just don't.
It's definitely much more immersive now.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's trying to eliminate those barriers that came with like even like AIM back in the day or chat rooms. I mean, but it's still odd because I'm like there's absolutely clearly a definitive difference in even how you I think emote and react.
Yeah.
I mean, no greater proof of this than COVID and everybody having to do digital like hangouts, whether it be Zoom or whatnot. But it's far different than actually being physically in person. And I mean, I definitely, because I see you all on a regular basis each week, it's why we can have fun and hang out if we're doing like, say, a round of Call of Duty or something, and we jump online. Like talking to you all on headset is far easier and enjoyable because I know it's like that's not the only way I converse. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's like when we do every once in a while have the one opportunity once in a blue moon to talk to Neil. Shout out to Neil and his little precious baby, and Megan. You had some help in that. But shout out to them, and it's like, but when we can hop on with Neil and hang out with him, it's nice and it's a blessing because we don't see him every day. But
Yeah.
it also makes me somewhat yearn to have more opportunities to see him in person.
Right.
Yeah, my feelings on it all is kind of multifaceted because like with you all, it's like I enjoy, like you said, getting online every now and then to play a game or something because I know like it's not the only way I have to interact. When it becomes the only way I can interact, like it is like COVID where you kind of feel trapped and lonely.
Yes.
Because digital's not where it's at. With Neil, it's like we still do get to see him in person from time to time, and having to be able to reach out digitally is just a great way of keeping in touch until those times when you could see him in person.
I think. No, go ahead.
I was just going to
Finish
say,
your thought.
I was finished with that thought. I was actually going to move on into something else if you wanted to.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I'm not a lot older than you guys, but a little older. But I'm literally from in an era where I didn't have the internet until I was a teenager. And so, I mean, in middle school is when we got the internet, and it was AOL dial-up and all that crap. We did have instant message, but again, the telephone to me is like the alternative to being in person. It's like if I can't see you in person, then it was the telephone. And then when text messaging and stuff became a thing, then it's like, okay, well now I can express my thought a little quicker than dialing and calling and
or
all
even
of that.
at your own leisure.
Yeah, right. You can answer me when you get time,
right?
But it's like for me, it's still I still want to see somebody in person above all. Like, and then beyond that, it's kind of like, well, then I'd rather text you or talk to you on the phone. So I know for a lot of younger people, they all they've grown up with is text messaging and Skype or Snapchat and Skype and all these things, and it's like so a lot of people would prefer to hang out over FaceTime than in person, and I think that's partly a generational thing.
Do you think that is a bad thing?
I don't think it's
or
a
preference.
I think it's preferential, but I think again it's just kind of what you've grown up with, and I don't see anything wrong with it. Obviously, I tell my 10-year-old, I'm like, hey, if we can have your friend over the house, let's do that. I'd rather him come over and hang out and play games here with you, and you all see each other in person than only trying to get together on the Nintendo Switch and play a game
and I think
or whatever.
That's good because I think it is mostly preference, except for when you make your only human interaction digital. I think that can be kind of bad because you do need to know how to socialize with people in person, and I think it's good that you do have your son bring his friend over and not just say, "Oh, only play online, don't ever." Because at some point, when you become an adult and you have to go in the real world and you have to interact with people, I think you can be very stunted if you've never learned any physical social cues in life because you hide behind a computer. Now, again, I think those are more extreme circumstances.
Right.
Well, and it's weird, too, because as I've gotten older, I've seemed to look back and, I'll cherish things from my child or, my adolescence, my teenage years a lot more from, days that, thankfully, we didn't have cell phones. Or, I'd look back now and it's a blessing that my parents wouldn't let me get one until I was 16.
Right, you didn't have access to that
right.
yet.
Yeah. I couldn't. And so it was like, yeah, it made things harder that I could easily, in an instant, do today of just even texting and saying, "Hey, I'm going over here." If that would be a simple solution for back then. But otherwise, I had to actually get on the phone. I had to call my parents' work and be like, is so and so there? Is Evelyn there? Can I talk to her? It's not an emergency. And then be like, "Hey, can I go over to Logan's house and hang out until dinner?"
Right.
Just so they knew where I was.
Then you got on your bike and you went.
And I went. Yeah. And then that's the weird thing too is there were times where it was like part of me after the day ended and I could only stay out till dark and I'd have to come home. I'd come home and it was like I was sad to see leave my friends and go home, and I yearned for there to be something like what we have now where there is instant all day communication.
Yeah.
You have a link all day with whomever you want. But at the same time, I also value the fact that there was a longing and a chance to miss who you wanted to connect with, because there would be times where I'd come home, not only would I spend time with my family, or I'd go upstairs, I'd stay up late and watch whatever was on TV until I crashed at 2 a.m. because hey, that's what summertime's all about.
Yep.
Or play a game, and then there'd be a time where I'd play a game that I know we would discuss the next day, and I'd get to ride over there and I'd have another day of fun time hanging out. But it was like I got to actually miss my friends for a bit. But I also was able to there were days where we would go over there, and whether we were playing basketball or something, we would sit in the basement and just chit chat or talk or do nothing.
Yeah.
There were times where it was even my sister, she said she jokingly but also honestly tells my nephew a lot of the times, she tells her son hey, you know what? Put the device down, be bored. Actually be bored. You don't need this constant stimulation of always. I find myself horribly doing this all the time, of whether it's picking up my phone or just turning on something in the background, or constantly having to have my emotions going on.
Yeah, well, you think about that as a 30-something-year-old man, it's so much more difficult for a kid to put that down. Like my kids literally in the car have to have something. Yeah. And there's times that they're just like throwing a fit and they're like, my Switch died or whatever. And I'm just like, look out the window.
Yes.
Like, I mean, Jesus, all I had to do when I was a kid was look out the window when my parents were driving.
The greatest piece of technology I had back then probably would have been like a Walkman.
Yeah, my Game Boy. Besides, I played the Game Boy in the back of the car.
And those AA batteries didn't last long.
Yeah, or when it got dark because they weren't
backlit. Yeah, that's right.
Couldn't play it at night. Yep. And it's just, I think it's funny.
Or I'd even get bored of doing that because you only had so many games you could take with you.
And that's the thing. I think, like, they talk about how, like, you know, like, just mental illness and stuff in general, but ADHD like has risen in years. And it's like because we've created a generation of like, even me, like I find myself like joke about having ADHD because like you said, I'm like watching a movie and I'm like, well now I gotta see what's going on the phone. Oh, now I gotta grab my Switch and I'm like, no, watch the movie. Just watch the movie.
Yes.
And it's one of those things where I think because you don't teach the discipline, everybody acts like, oh, it's just a genetic thing. It's like, yeah, I'm sure there is people who are genetically, you know, ADHD, but I think there's a lot of it too where you're just not disciplined anybody anymore.
I would even say I don't necessarily think that digital hanging out or digital communication has improved relationships as much as it's just maintained relationships. I feel like it's a good way to maintain a relationship either over long distance or a relationship that you don't get to be together personally as often, but I don't see it as being a way of like deeply improving a relationship.
Yeah, no, I
feel like personal touch is the way you increase or improve.
It's enhanced a relationship in so much as you still have that social relational like in-person relationship as well.
Yeah.
Like I mean just like you even brought up with the phone. I mean, it's funny because there are some conversations that I remember it used to be just the thing for my aunt to, you know, pick up the phone and call my mom, and they would be on the phone for an hour and a half. Just they would be sharing the news of the family.
Yeah.
And that's how it traveled. Okay, you know, and my Aunt Linda was that person. You know, she was the glue that held the family together and told everybody what was going on with whom. And those hour-long conversations were the way that you carried that on, even though my aunt didn't live that far away. But usually when we went over to her house, it was other entertainment that we got together for.
Yeah.
It wasn't just to, you know, share the gossip or spill the tea.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because then I think about now, it's like you have FaceTime. I think FaceTime is hugely, improving on just the talking back and forth when you can actually see the other person and you can read their interactions and the emotions on their face. But also even like, you know, being able to see someone like Neil and their child, you know, their newborn up there, and it's like you can actually see them in person. That's far better than just the telephone. But then there's other times where I'm like, actually, I don't have to have an on-the-phone conversation, so I am thankful for text because it can be a quick little, here's something that I just want to share with the group or with the person, and boom, you don't have to respond. Or, if you do a quick response, then boom, that's all that needs to be said.
Yeah.
Or like you said, you know, it's the convenience of I can just send this now whether I get a reply because everybody's busy. You know, but then there are days that I'm seriously considering this and thinking about this. I don't know if I completely, because of my job, I can completely unhook and detach myself. But there are, I would like to actually have like one day of the week where I just do not have any kind of connection. Mainly because it's either so that I can depend on that human face-to-face interaction in person, or so that I can just be devoid and actually have no tether to technology that makes me so dependent on it because I'm just, you know, again, stimulating that stimuli. But I don't know. I mean, it's weird because I definitely prefer in-person hangouts, but I'm also old enough and busy enough now in my adult life that I realize it's just not practical. And sometimes I think digitally that's where it's enhanced. How you can, I mean, I caught up back in January with that same group of friends I was talking about from when I was, you know, teenage years. and it was like Thomas was having his birthday, and he was just like, hey, he sent out a mass group text and was like, can we, I'm having like just a little birthday get together. I know schedules are hectic and everybody's lives are busy. Can we just meet and just kind of have like a chit chat?
That's cool.
And it was awesome. I hadn't seen Logan, and like it had been a while, and we were talking about trying to get together and hang out, and we just couldn't find the time, and this was the perfect opportunity. And so it was not only good seeing everybody, but we immediately started talking about, well, what are some ways that we can bridge that gap of how busy our lives are? And, it was like whether it's jumping online and trying to play something one night, or whether it is just, still trying to get together every couple of months just to have coffee or whatever and come hang out. Nothing crazy.
Yeah.
But I think it is good to have both. I think technology, again, it can be used as a useful tool. But I think like anything, it's, just like it's not the same. I remember when I first moved off the street that we grew up on, the first thing was like, it was going to be devastating and tragic that I was never going to see you as much as I did, because we saw each other every day.
Yeah.
And so it was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to see him. And it's like, obviously that it worked out.
It worked out. It worked out.
Yeah. I don't know
The
if
bromance
I think
is strong.
as long as you keep it as a tool, even you just mentioning that, it makes me think of like actual tools. It's like, yeah, it's great to have a hammer to put a nail in the board, but ultimately the deck is what you want.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's great to have the tools to maintain or to build upon, but the personal in contact using of, like the structure, that's ultimately the goal.
Right.
And so I would just say, I reiterate what you say. I can understand that it's an important tool to help better or maintain, that personal relationship. But obviously it's like with my brother-in-law, I love it when he calls and FaceTimes with the baby.
Yeah.
And I get to see Noah. I think that's great, but I'd rather be on his couch holding him.
Yeah.
And being on his couch holding him for an hour is still better than a year's worth of FaceTime calls. And that's just my opinion. And I think that's just partly because of how I grew up.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was going to be, but is there one you prefer? Ending on this one.
Yeah, definitely like in person.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I prefer in person.
Okay.
And I know
Well,
that's
depending on the
it's not
people.
possible sometimes.
there's some people I'm fine. I'm
that's
like,
true.
We can talk on FaceTime. We don't need to.
Well, no, I think you're right. I think it depends. At that point, maybe
Depends on the relationship.
It depends on the
Yeah,
relationship.
yeah.
Because there's plenty of people that I could just text and it'd be fine.
That's then all the communication I need with that
There's
person.
plenty of people that a text would be just fine, but they're going to call you anyway.
There's
That's
those
true.
too.
Yeah.
And then there's those that it's like, well, I wouldn't mind calling or text, but I guess no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen. But no, that's the long and short of it right there. That's what we're going to end on.
I'm grateful for all of those forms of communication.
I am too.
There's not anything about them that I loathe or what I think. God created us to be in contact with one another,
Right.
and to be a community and to
it's
commune
odd
with others. And
to
all these
think
things are good tools, like you said.
Yeah, and of all the developments, like social media, again, the word social is in the title.
Yeah.
But in most recent years, it's become anything but.
Yeah, it's become
social.
media.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I've even thought about this too with my addiction of getting on X and seeing,
Everything.
just tweets that are like constantly being generated, that are just like trying to keep me up to date, but at the same time realizing, one, okay, not only addictive and as bad as that can be, but also these are people that I have no connection with.
Yep.
Even as personal as it may seem sometimes, and you may find somebody that you agree with almost 99% of the time, and they just say the things that just strike you as, oh my gosh, I agree with this person on everything, but you don't know them.
Yeah.
And you can't bridge that gap unless there's some kind of organic way that you come to know each other. And it's like you can't have that as a replacement for that was on camera.
That's great.
Yeah, I went to
Good.
the wide
That's
shot and I saw it.
That's great.
And I don't know if anybody else picked up, but if they did,
will.
That's
if they
organic.
were watching this
That's as
shot,
organic as you could get.
Just go back and watch.
that's it. Alrighty, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in.
Perfect end.
To the Red Moon Podcast. Oh, another great episode. Again, we got 2 huge reviews next week. Dune Part 2, and of course our last Oscar-nominated Best Picture film, Poor Things. But if you want to stay up to date with everything that we got going on, and including next week's show, follow us on all of our social media accounts. Give us a like, share, and subscribe to Red Moon Book on Facebook, Red Moon Tweet on X, Red Moon Pics on Instagram, and of course search for Red Moon Productions on YouTube and Rumble, streaming live there as well every single week. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We've got one other thing to get to. It's our point of business. That's our email. Keith, you know it best. You say it best.
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
Every time. Oh, shiver up my leg. Alrighty, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
and
Don DeBastian.
Don!
feel like
Don
it's-
Sebastian.
Don DeLuise.
I like- Did you say Sebastian?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
I switched from both with these.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.